Hi, good morning. Welcome everyone, and thank you for joining us for this roundtable discussion to look at how we can address the industry's skills gap for the future. I'm really looking forward to this live panel discussion. We're going to be looking at the gender imbalance, the skills gap in general, and what needs to be done as painting and decorating is massively undersubscribed in colleges, how we can drive more decorators, both male and female, into the industry to ensure that we have future talent coming through. Before we get started, I'd just like to say that we really welcome your contribution with comments and questions for this session. If you have a specific question you'd like to ask, please hit the Ask a Question tab and I'll look to direct your questions to our panelists. If you'd like to come up on the screen, please give me a wave in comments and I'll bring you up on the screen to join us. If you're watching us live on Facebook, it's not too late to join us by clicking the link in the post to join the discussion. So firstly, I'd like to say a big warm welcome to my speakers. I've got Vicky Mather from Juliets Academy, Sandy Brambridge-Webster, who's head judge for CITB Skill Build and self-employed painter and decorator for 9 years, and Ellie Jobes, who is the HR director at Bagnalls. So I'd like to start by asking you to introduce yourselves. Vicky, would you like to start?
Yeah, great. Morning, Paula, and welcome to everyone who's joined us. My name's Vicky. I currently lead our Juliets Academy. So I work for AkzoNobel and also look after our Juliets Select Decorator scheme. So I've worked in trade quite a long time, previously merchanting business and now at AkzoNobel for 8 years as well.
Fantastic. Sandy, would you like to go next?
Hiya, yeah. Well, I'm a self-employed painter and decorator. Like you say, I've been doing it for 9 years on my own, and I'm the deputy lead judge for CITB Skill Build competition.
Fantastic. And Ellie?
Good morning, everyone. My name's Ellie Jobes. I'm HR director at Bagnalls. For those of you who don't know, Bagnalls is a national painting contractor, and we employ about 600 employees, and around about 10% of our workforce are apprentice painters and decorators.
Fantastic. And so, Vicky, can I ask you what you think is the impact in the decline in young people joining the industry?
Yeah, no problem, Paula. It's quite an interesting conversation, actually, because we've just back off the 2 days of an internal event and we've been sharing some statistics around actually the impact. And what we're noticing at the moment in the UK, the average age of a decorator is 50. And actually, it's quite an alarming statistic. And it's 10 years older than decorators in countries such as Poland. The other piece we've noticed that actually, if you look at that age group, 66% of decorators are likely to retire within the next 10 years. So not having young people coming into the industry is having an impact now, but actually it's going to have a huge impact as we go into the next 3 to 5 years as well.
Yeah, I mean, that is quite an age to have that as your average age for the industry. You know, it is, we do definitely need younger people coming in. Absolutely. And Ellie, what are your thoughts?
I mean, we certainly have an ageing workforce. We have a lot of painters who are 50 plus. As I've mentioned, we see the apprenticeship scheme as a really important part of growing our talent for the future. So we are getting some young people through, but equally, we know that in a few years' time, they will have options of joining other businesses. And if there aren't enough young people and enough painters in the industry, there's going to be competition to get those good people. And I suppose it's interesting what Vicky's just said about people in Poland being a lot younger. And obviously, with having left the EU, there are going to be more restrictions on bringing people in from other countries. So that in itself is going to lead to a skill shortage. So it's potentially a very big problem.
Yeah. Sandy, can I come to you?
Yeah, no, I think it is important, obviously, to get younger people more on board, only because obviously the tools, equipment, products, they're all developing as they go on. And if the average is about 50, it's trying to keep in with the trends of what's out there on the market. It's just sort of like getting the word out there to advertise or getting a way for younger people to know what is to offer in the trade for painting and decorating.
And Vicky, do you think Juliets Academy can make an impact on this agenda?
Most definitely. I definitely think we can make an impact. Juliets Academy established to be have solutions for every stage of a decorator's career. When we first started, we probably looked at those already in the trade. I think now our focus is to look at how do we welcome more people into the trade and get them going. But by no means just our agenda. This is a huge industry, and no one part can do it on their own. So this is everybody needs to come together and really actively. And I'm sure some of the ideas and suggestions we'll all come up with today are things that we all need to get behind, definitely.
So Ellie, how can we get younger people into the trade, do you think?
I had a really interesting conversation with a couple of our apprentices yesterday. I visited our internal academy, and we had 3 younger people in the academy. Excuse me. It was interesting because a couple of them were saying that they'd had other jobs first, and they hadn't really considered painting and decorating as a career. Excuse me. And one of the things they were saying that I thought was quite interesting was almost the image of painting and decorating potentially as not being a very interesting career. And they mentioned, the phrase, it's like watching paint dry. And actually, I think there's a lot more we can do to talk about what an interesting career it can be. And they were saying they love the fact that they can be working on an industrial job one day, and then a huge data center the next day, and they can just see lots of different areas of life, and no 2 days are the same. And I think there are a lot of young people who don't necessarily want to be stuck in an office all the time, and want an opportunity to have some more interesting days. And I think promoting that and seeing it isn't just about standing in a room with 4 walls and watching paint dry. There's a lot more to it than that.
Yeah. And didn't one of your directors start out as a painter and decorator?
Actually, there's a couple of our directors who started as apprentices. One of our main board directors started as an apprentice with Bagnalls and has worked his way up. So I think actually seeing that there are lots of opportunities as well is really important. So we have a management trainee programme, for example, and a lot of people who come through that route have previously been painters and decorators. A number of our branch managers have been painters and decorators with Bagnalls or with other companies. So I think helping people to see that it's a career opportunity. It's not just something that fills a couple of years before doing something else. Genuinely, there are lots of opportunities, but even staying as a painter and decorator, there's opportunities to become a supervisor on site and to gain different skills, to gain technical qualifications. And I'm not sure that that schools themselves necessarily have that knowledge of what a diverse career it can be.
Yeah. And Sandy, what are your thoughts on getting younger people into the trade?
I do think sort of targeting secondary schools, even if it's for like 1 session a week of all the different trades, just to cover all areas, just to give them, say from, there's a school where I particularly live, and they do it from the age of 14. So they'll actually either go to the college themselves just for an afternoon, or do it within the school. I think that's a great way to teach them of hand-on, even if it's not decorating, it's a construction point. But I think it's letting people have a go, see if they like it, and obviously be more informed about what entails and what future careers can come from it. But I do think it needs to be introduced at a younger age.
Yeah.
And what about CITB skill build and ambassadors and things? How do they encourage young people into the industry?
Well, we're hoping to sort of get out and speak to colleges direct. I think at the moment it is just colleges that we're sort of contacting to explain about obviously the skill competition and what can be gained from it. But I do think if we went younger, because when I was at school, I didn't know much about trades or anything. It was as soon as you left, I went into it at a later date when I had more sort of information and knowledge. So I do think it just needs to be pushed to a younger age target.
Yeah.
Okay. And Vicky, where do you think people get the inspiration then to become a decorator?
Well, yeah, I think both of the ladies have just said things there. Definitely from talking to decorators that come into the academy. You know, it's somebody somewhere in their life that has suggested it to them. So whether that be taking over a relative's business or the next door neighbour, or it seems to come from a person rather than an absolute choice of I've become a decorator now. Although we are seeing definitely some career changes. I think the pandemic, there's people that were particularly good DIYers that are now maybe seeing an opportunity to reflect and think differently, and maybe losing jobs in hospitality or retail may now give an option to do something different and be more flexible. But I think, as you just said, I think you just need those inspirational stories and showing it as a career. And if you're not in the industry, you don't know how good it could be for you. So you don't get to see those fantastic stories of managing directors of large contractor businesses that have started on the tools. So we need more of that out in the industry, definitely.
Yeah, I mean, it was just apprenticeship week last week, and you had some case studies and things, didn't you, about people getting involved in the industry?
We really started. So this whole topic and agenda is really a focus for us for the next 5 years, particularly after seeing the statistics on the ageing population. So we used National Apprenticeship Week as a backdrop to really start having a voice and to start talking about things. And we used some case studies. So these were experienced decorators that have now got apprentices, but we kind of did it on a two-way learning piece. So as much as they're giving their time up, they're also learning from the apprentices. So stories like how they use social media for their business. One of the apprentices had taught them all about TikTok. The decorator, who is in his standard middle aged population there, had never even thought about using it as a platform for his business. So we're really trying to highlight that, how the industry can change and how the experience can help that next generation as well.
So really, we need more to be done about publicising how great it can be to be a decorator. Absolutely, so that we entice people to join the industry.
Yeah, I think Sandy's point around secondary schools is really, really valid. I don't know quite what happens in a career centre anymore. I remember in my old school many years ago, it was you went into a room and there were pamphlets about careers you could take, but actually what's the modern world and where do you go on the internet to find out a great story about becoming a decorator now? So more of that definitely needed.
So Ellie, I mean, what are your thoughts then on how we bridge the gap between school and the workplace?
I mean, I think there is an awful lot that we need to do to try and bridge that gap, because I think sometimes what we find is that young people leaving school aren't necessarily work ready. And I suspect that's going to be compounded by the pandemic, because there are going to be young people 16, 17, 18 for the last 2 years when they should have been gaining independence. They've been stuck at home and not able to see friends and not able to do things that young people do. And so I think there's an awful lot we're going to need to do to try and make sure that people are understanding of what is actually required in a job. And again, going to the academy, Bagnalls Academy yesterday, talking to our experienced tutor, he was saying that there were some young people that he'd seen where they didn't quite get the whole world of work. So I think one of the things that we're now starting to do is when people come to us interested in an apprenticeship role, we're having a sort of an open session where they can come along and find out more about it, because we need to be honest with people that you do need to get up early, you do need to be ready to be on site for 8 o'clock in the morning, but equally if you're not there with the school, somebody's going to phone up and say, where are you, and they're going to get you to come back in. But in a workplace that won't happen. It might be tolerated once somebody not turning up to where they're being picked up. It's not going to be tolerated multiple times. So I think that we need to support people coming into the industry to understand what's the reality of it, all the great things about it, all the variety, all the career opportunities, but equally the honest expectation of this is what is demanded of you, and it is different from school. You're earning your wage, and there's a lot to be gained from that, but you've also got responsibility here, and you need to make sure that you understand what that responsibility might be. And I guess that I mentioned the 2 apprentices I was speaking to who had jobs before. We are finding that sometimes it is the people who've had jobs first and then come into it that find that transition a bit easier. So I think there is more work that needs to be done with schools. And I'm sure this doesn't apply just to our industry, it's lots of industries, to help schools to make people know what the world of work looks like, and get people ready to have a job.
I'd agree.
I think also, Paula, just to add, and I haven't really recently found out, but it's National Career Week next week. And it's about our industry as a whole getting on board with some of these bigger activities and initiatives and really promoting. So that I'm sure, exactly as Ellie just said, there's lots of people that are working on National Career Week. What can our industry be doing in that week and things like that are happening?
Yeah, definitely about raising awareness, I think, is the key message that's coming across here. Ellie, can I just come back to you and ask you what you think has been the impact of removing level 3 apprenticeships in painting and decorating?
Yes, well, I mean, up until fairly recently, it was an option for people to do a level 3 apprenticeship. I'm not sure that painting and decorating always has the best image in schools. What I've heard is that sometimes if people are wanting to go down a trade route, there's almost a sort of hierarchy of what the trades look like, and painting and decorating sometimes isn't seen as being as skilled as some other trades. And I think the difficulty is that that removal of level 3 then potentially confirms that, and young people who want to get a level 3 apprenticeship might be put off going into painting and decorating in the first place. So I think there's an attractiveness element to it, but I think the other side of it is also a skill side, because people won't be covering as much in college, although it's meant to be a 3-year course. If people have finished the requirements earlier, they can complete it within 3 years, but actually they won't have had that much of an opportunity to practice those skills on site. And again, the conversation I was having yesterday, there were people saying, well, I don't need to do spraying in order to get my apprenticeship, but actually that's a skill that the industry is going to need more and more of.
Yeah.
So we need to then think about, well, how do those people get that skill? Fortunately, within Bagnalls, we can provide that within our academy, but there'll be a lot of young people and older people coming through the apprenticeship route who won't fully have the skills they need to be a decorator for the next 10, 20, 30 years.
Sandy, you did level 3 apprenticeship. What's your thoughts on the matter?
It's a bit sad that they're getting rid of it from a personal view, because when I did my level 3, then obviously I did the spraying, I did the specialist effects, and I did more of the business side of the painting and decorating. And if they're trying to compress all this into level 2, I think the time frame, I think the time frame that they get in a year just to do a level 2 is not enough time as it is. And working with apprenticeships, they've come out and that they might have been good and been, completed and signed off, but it's when they're in a customer's house and they're paying, their skill level isn't there, and that comes itself with problems, and it's harder for say for me to want to take on people just because it's more harder for me in my day job. Yep. I do find it quite sad that they've got rid of it, and I do think that it is important, because it'll just look like we're out of the trades, that we're demeaning it because we only need to do it in 2 levels or 2 years.
That goes back to what Ellie was just saying. And Vicky, are you starting to see a lack of certain skills or progression as a result of removing level 3?
It's hard to say if it's directly as a result of removing level 3, but we definitely are seeing requests from the academy of some of the key areas like spraying in particular, wide width vinyls, and where people just need that extra level of support. So whether they're doing their formal training at college, they're also then doing their site experience, but actually there are some areas that they really do, and they would be wallpapering and spraying would be the two that we're definitely seeing. And if you just think about, wallpapering is expensive now, the actual materials are expensive. Making a mistake in a property is very different to making a mistake in our academy, for instance. So we know that we need to have a part in that. It's just how we play the part that's the right part for us and not take it away from the college delivery or the employer's role. Is how do we support and supplement is the approach we've been taking as the academy.
And is Juliets Academy a one-day course? A quick fix to people now able to say they're a professional decorator?
It's a question that comes up loads of times. I think decorating in the UK is really interesting if you just look at it, because it's not licensed and anyone can be a decorator. So on the continent, you have to complete certain level of study before you're allowed to use the title of being a painter and decorator. So it's an interesting one, isn't it? Because it's a low risk startup as a career. We want more people in the industry, and you can just become, go from a DIYer to become a decorator. But you can also invest in yourself and your business. And if doing a one-day course helps you be better than you were yesterday, then that's great. But we would never, ever say you are now a time-served decorator because you've been on a introduction course at Juliets Academy. But that's not. Our vision is to help you at every stage of your career. So as you're developing, I think Sandy, you said about materials and technology and equipment's moving. We aim to stay really close to manufacturers to make sure people do have the experience of and the latest things that are out there as well.
So next week is International Women's Day on the 8th of March. Vicky, do you see many female decorators coming through Juliets Academy on courses?
Yeah, we do. We've got 2 courses today and ladies decorators on these courses today. What we have noticed is it's about 20%. We started tracking it recently, about 20% on our face-to-face courses. But we have noticed an uplift to about 40% on our online courses. And we're just going to do some work into understand, is it more that the style of learning, the flexibility of managing life and learning works better for a female population, or is there an element of not sure what to come to a training centre where it may be quite heavily, or the perception might be heavily dominated in male. So there's definitely something that is happening between that break of actually coming to the academy or doing online learning with us as well.
And Sandy, can I ask you, what is it like as a female to be in construction?
Not gonna lie, it's not the easiest of things. There's lots of things I do feel like a lot of the times I have to prove myself a little bit more just to get sort of like to people to listen and like a bit of the respect. But it's hard obviously when you have your own family as well and kids, and as well as being self-employed, because there's a lot involved in the industry, not just your working day, but everything that comes with it after work. So going out for quotes or writing up your invoices and quotes and everything. So but no, I do enjoy it. I do feel it gives me my own independence. I do get flexibility from it, but it's I just think don't want to sound bad, but like I think more of a passion, and more of like when you're going to somebody's home, you're more thoughtful and careful, and I don't know, I just think it's definitely I'm glad it's a career choice that I've chosen. I just wish I knew about it from when I left school. And then
Ellie, how do you think we go about increasing diversity in the industry with regards to gender, ethnicity and income groups?
And I think it's really interesting what Sandy's just said there about I wish I'd known about it at schools, because I think that as a career choice for anybody, painting and decorating isn't necessarily pushed at schools. I think even more so for young women, that actually encouraging girls and young women to go into the industry, I think it just won't even cross a lot of career teachers' minds. So that's a barrier in the first place, that actually if people aren't even seeing that this is a potential career option, how can we get more women into the industry? I think for me, I think there's a lot to be said for the sort of promotion of role models. I find it really interesting within our business that the branch that has the most female painters is the branch where our branch manager is a woman, and she was a painter and decorator herself and has worked her way up. And I just think it must show people that, yes, this is a career that I can get into. It's something I can follow. And then the more women you've got in the business, then the more then that's attractive to other people. We obviously talked about ethnicity and income groups. And again, I think role models, particularly with ethnicity, come in. And I think there's a lot to be done as a business in the industry to make sure that we have images of people that aren't just white men. And that's hard when a lot of our business is white men, but we are getting better at diversity, and we're making a positive effort to make sure that our social media images and our marketing does reflect more diversity, equally without being tokenistic and having the same person sort of fronting our sort of employer advertising. And I think income groups, one of the things even just we're starting to do is now looking at measuring that. We're in early days of it because we don't necessarily know what people's backgrounds are. So asking about questions when people join us as an apprentice about things like free school meals. And then that way, I think we can then start a conversation with people to go, how can we help people? And I think one of the things that we have got to be aware of, particularly with things like transport, is barriers to getting to interviews and barriers to getting to site. Because what we wouldn't want to do is find that people aren't able to get to work or to an interview because of barriers. So, you know, being willing to refund the cost of travelling to an interview, and making sure that there is free transport available to people, that we're choosing apprentices from areas that have got other people living nearby who can get them to the workplace. I mean, we do a fair amount of work with on social housing, and we often team up with some of the social housing customers that we've got to then try and recruit apprentices from people who are within that community, and so that's another way potentially of getting people into the business from different groups.
Okay, Vicky, can I come to you and ask you how you think manufacturers can play a part in promoting equality in our industry?
I think very, very linked to everything Ellie's just said about that inspiration in it. It comes down to imagery as much as anything else, telling stories and imagery, and we're going to be consciously thinking about how do we promote diversity and equality throughout our imagery and exactly the profile on social media. I think also celebrating the successes. I know within our Juliets Select decorator scheme, we have an annual awards events, and you know, we don't have a female decorator. We treat our female decorators as we will every other decorator, and you know that they're winning awards alongside their male peers, and that equality message, we saw it this year in the Brits, didn't we? You know, that's what we need to be doing. So there's that balance of championing females in the industry, but also celebrating the equality and the absolute skilled professionals that we have got in female decorators, like Sandy, for instance.
Fantastic. And I mean, now the pandemic has had such a huge impact on all of us. Ellie, can I ask you, what are your concerns about the impact it's had on the mental health of young people coming into the industry?
Yeah, I mean, I mentioned earlier that I think particularly for young people who were sort of 16, 17, 18 when the pandemic hit, at the point where they were just starting to get their independence, that was taken from them. There's also people who may be a little bit older who were furloughed. Again, talking to people yesterday, They said the furlough was great for the first couple of weeks, and then actually it was really hard because there was no structure to their day, and it was really hard to kind of keep motivated. And talking to people about that, I think it has had a big impact on the mental health and well-being of people, and I think young people, in particular, where they haven't had the resources to draw upon, where they haven't been able to see their friends, it's likely to have had much more of an impact. I also think it's hard for young people seeing adults stressed about things, and they will have seen that. I know working from home with young children, it was hard to sort of shield them from the stress that caused, and people will have seen that with parents who were worried about money, or trying to juggle working at home and homeschooling at the same time. So I think talking to people, it's not been an easy time for many people, and inevitably that's going to have an impact on mental health. And I think there's just a lot more pressures on young people these days than there ever were, with things like social media and kind of a desire to be perfect, and seeing perfect posts on Instagram or whatever social media platform it might be, and it's impossible to live up to those things. And I think that has a really negative impact on a lot of people's mental health at the best of times.
Yeah, definitely. And Sandy, you've got your own teenagers. What's been your experience?
Well, the beginning of lockdown and everything. So we took, obviously, to get them into like a routine with the school and online learning, and we took the first 3 months off. It has been hard for them, just like you said, Ellie, like just the routine of like getting up at a certain time, getting dressed, and just getting them to be interested or motivated in the day. It's just setting up, I think, not seeing their friends and going out, or it kind of, they become within themselves, obviously spending a lot more time in their bedrooms. Luckily, thank God for technology and the FaceTime and Zooms and everything, so they are able to have like group talks and everything. But yeah, it's been it's luckily for mine are just coming up to the GCSE year, so it's they're able to take that form of exam this year and stuff like that, so that's made a massive improvement. But looking at those over the last couple of years and what they've missed out, or their like end of school from everything, it is quite depressing to see that they're never going to have that or get that experience back in their life. So
it's really sad. And Vicky, with regards to Juliets Academy, how have you been supporting decorators, many of whom have been working in isolation during this time?
Yeah, and I think I think there's lots of statistics around about mental health and construction, and we know that we're a male-dominated industry, and impacts of mental health on men is often a stigma and not something that is talked about. It's great to see so many charities now really bringing it to the forefront, and I think the construction industry is really getting hold of it as a topic and making it a topic that needs to be talked about. From our point of view, we have a couple of forums. We definitely saw that sort of community vibe where decorators turn to decorators more to support. And there was that moment where tools were downed, but it wasn't just that. It's relatives were unwell, financial issues, what funding was available, who could access pieces, whether they were limited companies or not, and just getting advice and that peer support. I say we actively had a role in it because there are forums, but actually it was lovely to see so many supporting each other. I think one of the nice pieces of the lockdown was acts of kindness and that general coming together. And one of the things we did for our Juliets Select decorators, which you may have heard of, is we launched a virtual pub. So on a Friday evening, we opened up what is a Zoom call, so something very, very similar to what we're doing today, where people could just drop in, catch up with each other, just talk about the week, talk about any issues they had, but just talk and connect. And actually we did it weekly, and we now, with the restrictions lifting, there was still a request from our members to keep it going, because what we were able to do was connect members, didn't matter where they were in the UK. So, or even though we would always have had physical events, everybody can't get to those. So, but actually it's meant that we know our members more as individuals rather than just a decorator, or, you know, we've met dogs, we've met parents, we've met children, partners. And yeah, our little virtual world continues on a monthly basis now, but interesting, definitely.
And what about the way the industry's evolving with new products due to VOCs? How are decorators coping with this?
Yeah, the from our point of view, we've always seen a challenge with our application techniques. I think a lot of decorators get into habits, and it's easy that something doesn't quite work. It's the fault of the product, and actually it's just a reviewing your ways of working. And you know, for years now in the academy, we've been doing a lot on waterborne, and you know, the switch from oil to waterborne, and how that's going to work in the industry, and just awareness and education, and trying things that are maybe a little bit different to your standard practice, but they're there. But you'll see more and more from us as a manufacturer with the sustainability agenda bigger and bigger, packaging and the product itself, and you'll see that across manufacturers in the next 3 to 5 years, definitely.
Okay, and Ellie, due to the pandemic, the industry went online almost overnight. What effect did you find that had on your apprentices?
And I think for apprentices, sometimes that was quite positive, because I think in general, they're the younger age group, and they've grown up with technology, and they've learned how to use lots of things at school, and that's how they interact with their friends. I think it's maybe been a bit more of a challenge for some of our other employees, who maybe they've sort of thought, well, actually being a decorator, I don't need to know how to use technology, particularly when you work for an organisation who deals with invoicing and any communication online with customers. So, I mean, some of the things that we did, particularly when people went back into the workplace, and when we started to go back onto sites, we were doing things virtually, in terms of things like toolbox talks, and what measures we were putting in place to make sure they were as safe as possible on site. And for some people, I think that went down really, really well. For others, that was a bit more of a challenge to get used to some of those things. But it's also made us think longer term, what more can we do from a technology point of view that's going to help us as a business, but also help individuals to develop their skills. So we're doing some more training online. So things like asbestos awareness we can now do online, and a lot of people have really valued that they can do that without necessarily having to spend a long time travelling somewhere to do it, when actually they can do that anywhere. And with some of our members of staff, our contracts managers, we're doing a lot more training virtually, having virtual discussions. And it's a great way as a national company of being able to bring people together who wouldn't necessarily know each other. So just over a year ago, we have management trainees, and at that stage, we couldn't have brought them together from all over the country to do a management trainee conference, but we held it virtually, and it wasn't quite the same. We've got a management trainee conference in a couple of weeks, so I'm really looking forward to seeing people face to face, but actually being able to still see people, still bring people together and know this is what your colleague looks like. And I've said a number of times, I'm so glad that if the pandemic was to happen, it happened when it did and not 10 years ago, because it would have been so much more difficult to continue to run businesses.
Yeah. I mean, earlier, Vicky, you were saying about the research that you've done and the average age of a decorator being 50.
Yeah.
How do you think these decorators are coping with that transition to the industry going online?
Yeah, I think I'm completely echoing Ellie's point there around, that's probably the area I see the most challenge for people. You know, we went to online ordering almost, and it's all of a sudden it's just a different way of working. And there's just the little things like one of our members who was doing our select members who was using our virtual pub enabled him to use Zoom and get to grips with online cameras and webcams, but then was able to take that and use that with his family at Christmas to spend Christmas together. So I think as much as it's an industry challenge, I think we've got a role. It's a life skill, and you know, nowadays more and more it's not just our industry that's online. How you deal with your bank and how you deal with paying in a check is all. It's just the way we are. So I do feel we've got more and more. We've got some online workshops, and the most popular ones are around building businesses on social media platforms and Facebook. And it's probably that, what am I missing out on? No longer is it the yellow pages you would advertise in. So where do you put your business now as a self-employed decorator? And how do you get the most from it? So I think this is probably the area we'll see more and more, but not just for the business, for the general life skills, and helping your child with their education when a lot of that's online now as well is a really big piece for us.
Well, I think that brings us to the end of our planned discussion. If any of you do have any questions that you would like to put to the panel, please feel free to type those in. I hope you've all enjoyed the discussion and found it informative. And thank you everyone for joining us this morning. And I'd just like to say a final thank you to my panel of guests. I've really enjoyed chatting with you all this morning. Thanks for joining me.
All right.
Thanks, Paula.
Thank you.
Thanks, Paula.
Thank you. We do have more sessions lined up for the remainder of the day. If you would like to pop over onto the Trade Decorator website, that's trade-decorator.co.uk, and hit the banner there for the festival, and you'll be able to see everything we've got for the rest of today and right through till the 11th of March, and register for those sessions. And I'll see you all again a bit later today. Thank you. Thank you, ladies.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.